I bled blue. I've got a lot of injuries. I've killed a few people on the line of duty. I shot people. I put a lot of people in the hospital, but a lot of people put me in the hospital. I got my lumps and bumps. Can't even tell you how many broken bones that I got along the way too. I made over 105 off-duty arrests. I made from petty larceny to double homicide off duty. I felt I was blue through and through. I still think that police is my identity. I would have them on my nightstand like most 99% of people would have of their kids or their wife on their nightstand. I would have pictures when I woke up. I would see them. I had them on my home desk. I had them on my work desk.
Wow.
I had them on the dashboard of my cars. One of my goals was to run into them and capture them, take them off the street so they couldn't hurt civilians or other cops.
Welcome to the Purpose Over Pension podcast. Today we have my man, Ralph Friedman, the most decorated NYPD detective in the department's history. Ralph, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Lenny.
Absolutely. Ralph was a guest on my old podcast, the Finance United podcast. I've been waiting to get him back on in some capacity to be able to interview him and put a new spin to things a little bit, in which we talk about his experience within the New York City Police Department, but then adding the purpose element to it. So, Ralph, how you been, man? It's been a few years.
Been a few years. I was looking forward to coming back on your show. Everything's been good, doing a few projects, and good to be back with you again.
Yeah, I think it's been since maybe like 2018, maybe 2019.
Yeah, something like
or something
that.
like that.
Yeah, it's been like 6 years, 7 years.
And that equates to how many years retired now?
Well, I'm retired 42 years now.
42 years.
Policing changed slightly,
Yeah.
to say the least.
Do you feel like it's changing substantially as every year goes by?
Made big changes were, I guess, in 2000 between the rioting and COVID and cameras and body cams, and I think a lot has changed.
For sure.
It totally changed, actually.
Yeah. Do you think you could be a police officer in times like this?
I think I would last like 2-3 minutes.
2-3 minutes. Why's that?
Yeah,
Why's that?
Well, we didn't do things wrong. We did things the way we were taught back then.
Yeah.
And it was a different world, different city, different thought processing was going on, and things changed. And there's always changes in the world and in the city, but there were big changes with those things. I think with George Floyd, the COVID, and the expansion of cameras, not only in the police department, but they're in security. There's traffic cameras, there's building cameras, store cameras, building cameras. I think a lot of police work, especially detective work, could be done. A lot of it is done from the office today, where they just sit and view video, and they could track it back going from an inch to a mile or 2 miles from wherever, where we had to do a lot of legwork. We were out in the field. It was a different kind of policing, and we were taught differently. We had changes when I came on the job also, with the corruption and stuff from the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, in the 60s. But I came on as a trainee in 1968, and then I was appointed a patrolman back in February of 1970. And that was the Knapp Commission was there. That totally changed the police department. But, I believed in that kind of policing then. I still do, actually. It was a more hands-on job. And getting into the purpose of your show with the purpose over pension, we believed we were doing something right. There was no thought of pensions involved. It was something, you thought of pensions as an old person's thing.
Wow.
We were all young guys, and we came on to do a job. You wanted to be the best cop you could be. You started out where you loved the action. Guys liked certain units you could go to, like highway or aviation or harbor or TPF, Tactical Patrol Force. There were a lot in the NYPD, there's a lot of specialty units, which guys gyrate towards that direction. Or you could go for plain clothes, organized crime work, or get into detective division and work your way up through there. Or you could go to civil service ladder and become a supervisor, a sergeant, a lieutenant, a captain. And there's different routes. There's so much you could do in the NYPD. And being it's a civil service job, you could do nothing for 20 years, or you could be very active. You really have a choice of what you could do. But as we were coming on, our purpose was to be good police officers and do a good job and not get hurt. We didn't think of pensions, and we had a purpose, and pensions was something for old people that you didn't think you were ever going to get to.
You didn't think you were going to get to a pension?
Well, you never thought of getting old. Never mind getting a pension.
Right.
You equated pension with old age.
Okay.
And even though the police department is a young man's job, and today it's changed so much because I would equate today's cops as being smarter cops because of the training, the technology and stuff. We were more tougher cops, I would say, because we were hands-on, out in the street. And today's police officers, they know their retirement date while they're in the academy. They know when they're getting out. And the police department is more of a stepping stone for them. They go on
Correct.
to other careers because if you could get out, if you become a cop, they changed the age a couple of times. It was 20 and 21. I think it goes back and forth sometimes. But if you come on at 20, you could actually be out with a full pension at 21. You come on 21, you're out at 41.
Correct.
You got like 40 years ahead of you, which is a longer career. So they use it as a stepping stone to learn and to get their benefits and their pension, and they move on. When I was on, our purpose was to be a police officer forever. They used to tease us and say, I only lasted 14 years due to a line of duty injury. But guys they would tease you and say, you're a rookie for the first 20 years. Everybody stayed on. You see guys with 30, 35, 40 years on was
Really?
very, very common. Today, it's super rare. Guys, they get out. When I was on, there was nothing called vesting out. That's where you could pack it in if you didn't like the job or had a problem on the job, and you could get out, but you wouldn't get your pension, a prorated pension, or any medical benefits until you hit your 20th anniversary.
Really?
Then
So vested was 20 years back then?
No, there was no vest.
There was no, oh,
Then
right,
they
okay.
came up, they invented, or not invented, but started 5 years. Then you could vest out.
Got you.
Now, if you had a problem with a boss, or you didn't like the job, or you had a better opportunity, you could leave the department and you wouldn't, if let's say you vested out at 5 years, you wouldn't get any kind of pension benefit or medical until your 20th year anniversary. So you have to wait 15 years, and you would get something that's prorated down. But it was a way out. Now, over the years, today, you could have, I'm sorry, I got it backwards. It used to be 15 years you could
It
vest
should be
out.
15 years.
Now it's down to 5 years.
Right.
So I'm sorry, I had it backwards.
Okay.
But guys get out at 20 is the limit. Today, if you see guys doing 25, 30, the only ones you ever really see doing that are really big bosses, way over the rank of captain. Because they have, they're making much more money and they're more prestigious, almost like a political position.
Right.
Because after captain, you have to be promoted just like a detective.
Right.
Where your rank could be taken away. It's not a civil service rank anymore. It's an appointed position. So today, police officers, detectives, sergeants, lieutenants, they're out at 20 years. Very rare they stay in. And with the conditions and the restrictions that have been put on police officers, when people used to say police officers are handcuffed, they really don't know what it's like today. I mean, we have something in the law that came back from the George Floyd incident, which is called a diaphragm law, that was passed in New York, where you can't fight a person. The people who made these laws obviously have never been in a fight, but you can't restrict someone's breathing or blood flow. And that's not a way to fight. If you're fighting for your life, anything goes.
Right.
And someone could be choking you out or stopping your breathing or your blood flow. You have to be able to fight back, and you have to win. See, today they have verbal judo. They have uh, uh, backing off, or uh, you know, other kinds of policing where we
Sure.
were taught you're the police. You have to crush them. If you're going to stop something, you take action, and that's it. If they use their hands, you use your nightstick. They use a nightstick, you use your gun. It's, you have to overpower them and crush them. When you say you're under arrest, that's it. And you could see the difference in policing today with all, you see videos on TikTok and Reels and things where there's like 20, 25 guys respond to a scene. And supervisors, they're calling supervisors, and supervisors are calling supervisors. Where when you went out back in my day in the 70s, you and your partner, you handle a job, you handle a job that bosses didn't want to hear. You were given a responsibility. Supposedly, you were taught the law and the restrictions and regulations are, and you handled your business. You handled your job. Very rare did you call a boss. And policing's changed so much. And in my opinion, it changed because somehow along the way, politicians got involved in policing, which I'll never understand.
In a major
'cause
way.
They never worked in and plus you have a city council. And these people have never done policing. They've never walked in a police officer's shoes. They've never been in a back alley or had a fight for their life or been in a ghetto neighborhood at 2 in the morning on their own. And they're making decisions for police policies. To me, I equivalent to like you're going in the hospital for a heart surgery and the janitor's going to run the surgery.
That's a great analogy.
It makes no sense.
Right.
Bosses who set policy and run police departments should be bosses that came up through the ranks who have experience, training, and knowledge of policing. You don't take someone from another field. If you want a plumber to come to your house, you don't want a guy, you call a plumbing business. You don't want them to send over an accountant. You want a plumber to come over.
Exactly.
So you give police the responsibilities. You teach them physical training. You teach them rules, regulations, and laws. And it's their responsibility to carry them out. And you're supposed to give them that responsibility. If they screw up or they're not capable of doing the job, then they get fired. That's what happens in any vocation, a job. And I think screening, they lowered standards in situations, which I think in any physical stuff, you should raise standards. You want to get the best you can. You want the best doctor, you want the best accountant, the best plumber, you want the best police officer. So you have to raise standards.
Right, but what happens when, by raising the standards, you now have less of a pool to choose from because the politicians are causing a problem with policing and handcuffing them, and now people don't want the
Well,
job?
that goes back to that politicians shouldn't be running the police department. But there's 8 million people in New York alone, over 8 million, and there's the surrounding counties that people can become police officers. So if you pay police officers decently and you don't restrict them and let people harass them the way they do that you see in videos, you will have a larger pool. And I just believe in raising standards. And you wouldn't want to do that with doctors when you go to a surgeon. You
Sure.
just wouldn't want to have a larger pool. You don't want to lower the standards and have people that are not capable of doing the job operating on you. Policing is a serious business. It's very serious. The requirements should be high, and the seriousness, just carrying a gun is a serious thing in itself because you got to guard that gun 24 hours a day. You don't want children getting it or losing it or falling in the wrong hands or anyone playing around with it. There comes responsibilities that are 7 days a week, 24 hours a day for every minute that you have a gun. Even if you go on vacation in another country, you're responsible for your gun where you live.
100%.
You have to have a secure place. These are responsibilities that police carry with them for every second that they in possession of a weapon and they're on the job.
So going back to the purpose part of things in regards to you and being a police officer, when did you realize that that was a career that you wanted to take on, and what was it that made you say, this is for me?
Well, for me personally, I didn't want to go to college. I had this mentality. I wanted to get out in the world and earn my own way. I wanted to get a job and get on my own. I moved out of my parents' home when I was 20, and that's when I started as a police trainee. And I was making very good money at the time. My father got me a job with a moving company. It was a muscle job, but I enjoyed it, and I was making a lot of money. At that time, it was 1967, and I was making $4.50 an hour. That sounds funny today, but it was a lot of money back then.
Wow.
The minimum wage was like $1.15.
Really?
So, and people had to work a 40-hour week to make overtime. When I was in the moving business, I worked for Neptune Worldwide Movers out of New Rochelle. You only had to work an 8-hour day. If you did 10 hours that day, you got 2 hours overtime. It was a very good job. I was the first of my friends to get a car. And it was, I was doing very well. I was lifting weights. I was into bodybuilding. And going to work to lift for 8 hours was more lifting. I was on the top of my game.
Yep.
But then one night, I was out on a Friday night with a few friends, and I said, "What are you doing tomorrow?" And they said, "We're taking the police test." And it was a walk-in back then, not like today you have to register. And it was being given in the high school I graduated, DeWitt Clinton. And I said, I never thought of becoming a cop. I have no friends, no family, no relatives, no nothing, no connection with the police department. And I had a couple of summonses, nothing criminal or nothing like that, speeding tickets, drag race and stuff like that. So they said they were going to take the police test. I said, knock on my door. If I'm up, I'll go. It was that kind of lackadaisical attitude I had.
Yeah.
But once I took the test, something hit me. I don't know what it was, but I got excited about it. And I thought, this could be a great job with a career without a college education.
So it became a reality once you took that test.
Once I took the test, and they called me pretty fast. I was underage. I was 19. I just turned 19. So I actually got called, and I did 2 years of indoors policing. We didn't have a gun or a shield, and we didn't enter the academy because in the academy you have the physical gun training, and you couldn't do that if you were under 21.
Okay.
So I did 2 years. I was actually hired as a fingerprint technician because in 1968 they passed a law in New York City area that anyone with long arms had to come in and get fingerprinted and get a permit for a rifle or shotgun. And believe it or not, people were coming in voluntarily all day long in all the precincts, and there had to be people there to fingerprint them to get this new unit going called the Rifle and Shotgun Unit. And they were volunteering to come in and register their long arms, which was rifles and shotguns. And I was doing that for 6 months in the 4-4 precinct. And then in June of 1968, they invented in New York the 911 system. So I got transferred down there, and I was answering phones for 911 calls. And then I got, not promoted, but raised to a position where I was on an action desk.
So what did they have before the 911 system?
Well, you had to dial 7 numbers to a local precinct, a local communication system in each borough. The one in the Bronx that I was familiar with was in the 4-6 precinct, was a garage in the back of the 4-6, and that's where they had a communications for that borough. Now it was all the boroughs in this one building in police headquarters, which was 240 Center Street. And because 1 PP wasn't built yet. That was built, I think, in
1 PP
71.
wasn't built yet?
No.
Oh, man.
So I was working in 240 Center Street, and it was a big building, like a real architectural design building. And I was working there midnights, answering the phones, and then getting results for bosses. I became on the action desk where I would be a go-between between supervisors and the dispatchers. And I would give the bosses the results of heavy jobs, like a bank robbery, a police officer shot, big jobs that were out of the ordinary. I would give them the disposition so they were aware for other higher supervisors. And then I was approaching 21, and then I went into the academy, and we did that for 4 months.
So let me ask you this. Did the 911 system develop from the NYPD? Was that originated by the New York City Police Department?
As far as I know, yes. Yeah, they created that whole system that I know of.
So 911
As far as I know.
Okay.
As far as I know, it did, yes.
Interesting.
And another thing that people don't know, but there's another police headquarters which became 1PP, One Police Plaza, which was built in like very early 70s. And the building 240 Center Street, which was police headquarters, turned into a condo building.
Wow.
You know, like I said, it was an architectural design, a beautiful building, very large, took up a whole block, and it became a condo building.
So you being a police officer, it kind of started as, hey, this test is going on. My boys are taking it. Let me just wing it.
Yeah, I mean, there was no studying. It was just a walk-in.
That's crazy.
It was just a lark. And then,
Yeah.
like I said, it turned on something, and I really got into it. And my real desire was to become a motorcycle cop, highway patrol.
Okay.
And then once when you go through the police academy, at the end, when you're ready to graduate, like what they call gun and shield day, you get an assignment. You go up to a big bulletin board. Everybody's name is there. And you find out where you're going. You have no idea. You know, they ask you, you fill out wish lists, which it's probably you never get. You know, they probably send you away from where you want
your
to
dream
go.
sheet.
Yeah, dream sheet.
Yep.
Or wish list, whatever they call it over the years. But you never seem to get what you want. And I really didn't. I put down, to be honest, I don't remember what I put down. I probably put down highway. But you really need some time before you go to a specialized unit. But I wound up going to the 4-1, which had a really infamous or famous, whichever you want to say, reputation as being a really rough and tough precinct. It had a nickname of Fort Apache.
Yeah.
From before I got there in 70. I think it got its name around 68 or 69 because it was under attack. And the guy who actually named it was a black lieutenant named Gittins. And he was a real piece of work. He was a real tough cop. And he would scream at you all the time, but he never got you in trouble. Everybody knew him, Lieutenant Gittins, and he worked the desk. And one day the precinct was under attack, and he was calling the borough for help. And they were saying, how bad is it? What's going on? It's like, I don't know if we could curse on this.
Okay.
And he said, it's like fucking Fort Apache. We're under attack. And that name, officers heard it, and it just stuck, and it's still there. They made books and movies. My captain wrote the book, and it developed into a famous movie with Paul Newman. And the name just stuck, and he died not that long ago. He got old, but he retired. But he was very famous for naming that. And like I said, he used to scream at us rookies and belittle us, but he never hurt us. And he really taught us how policing was when you came in. Because one of my first arrests, I grabbed a numbers guy. And I really didn't know what I had, but I knew it was illegal. And I brought him in. He says to me, you know what I got? You know what you have, officer? I said, not really. And I showed him. He says, let me tell you what you have. And he would explain to you and educate you right there on the spot. And this is how policing was back then. You would learn in the academy, but the real learning went on from veterans.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you before we go further into when you got out of the academy. What was the academy like back then? Because I'm sure compared to when I was in, you think it was soft, just like when I was in.
What year were you in?
I graduated in 06.
Oh,
I went in July of 06. So what did that regimen, what did the education look like?
Well, you did 3 solid hours of gym.
3 hours of gym?
3 hours of gym.
Every day?
Every day. 3 hours.
And what did that consist of?
Well, it consisted of all kind of tactics training, how to put on handcuffs, the correct methods and ways to do it. Taught how to use a nightstick, which was nightstick was a very, very big tool in policing. Sometimes there was more justice at the end of a nightstick than in a court of law. But people didn't have to get a record, and sometimes people got straightened out if they got hit, didn't want to deal with police again. You know, there was a lot of things taught with a night, and a lot of things you could do with a nightstick that people wouldn't realize. And it was a big tool in policing, which I don't see today. But getting back to the academy, we had full-on contact boxing. And if you didn't do full-on, if they walked around the instructors and you weren't doing what you were supposed to do, you would have to fight them. And believe me, you didn't want to fight them.
So there wasn't 50%, let's go 75%.
And you were taught to overcome. They would drill. It was like, I wasn't in the service. That was a piece of my life that's missing. Of all the things I've done in my life, I was never in the service. I have a lot of respect for the service and all the veterans and the people that are in the services. My father was a combat veteran, and that's a piece that's missing. But I equivalent the academy back then to like basic training that you see in movies in like the Marines and stuff and the Army. But you had to do what they told you to do. And you were taught to overcome. You were the police, and you had to get the job done. And it's some of the differences, which when you look back, I think it was very good. And you couldn't show a weakness. You no matter if you got hurt, you had to show you were strong. If you wanted to commit suicide, you couldn't. Anything couldn't be exposed. Now they have suicide hotlines, things to help police officers, but you couldn't do that back then. Not only would it ruin your career, you would look weak and stuff. They would probably put you off the job and take your guns away.
Yeah, and
but
that's something I want to talk about later too.
I knew you would want to talk about that.
Yeah,
you know, and you couldn't show weakness. You couldn't seek help for anything, mental, physical. You were taught to, you're a machine-like. You
and
were the toughest. They drilled it into you or pounded it into you that this is how you had to be. And it made guys, it influences you the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And then you go out in the field, and it's all backed up by tough cops out there. I went out there, and I see these guys, like they're just tough human beings, and you want to be like them.
Do you think that you had to be that tough as a cop back then and not be able to be broken because of how tough the streets were?
That's right. When you first went out, you gave in a foot post by yourself. Now, you get sent out there, you're in like a foreign country. You go to some of these ghetto precincts where there's so much drugs you're not used to, violence, poverty. You see things that you haven't seen. You read about it, you see it on the news, but a lot of us didn't grow up with that.
Right.
And now you put into that area, and you see that sometimes there's such a disregard for human life. But you're put out there yourself. Over the years, when you came on, Lenny, I'm sure there was what they call field training officers. You went out with like 6 rookies and a sergeant. You were just thrown out there. You had your gun, your shield, your nightstick, and what you were taught, your brains.
It's funny. We had Impact.
Well, it's the same.
It was Impact.
But you had training officers with you?
So the training officers we did have were the officers that did Impact right before us that only had 6 months on us.
Right. That's not so good, but it's a little step better than what we had.
Right.
It keeps increasing.
Yeah.
At some point, they had those vans, and you would go out with like 6 or 8 guys and a sergeant.
Right.
And you would get sort of broken in. There was no breaking in. You were just like thrown in the pool, let's say. It was sink or swim.
Right.
And they expected you to swim. You had to get the job done. And you really get the shit jobs. When you start out, I don't know if you'll remember this, but the 2 things that rookies would get when you're on foot patrol, you get pulled off for 2 things. To sit in a hospital with a psycho or sit in an apartment with a DOA. until the ME get there. Because the
Right.
radio cars would handle these jobs, and then they go back on patrol,
Yep.
and the sergeant calls a rookie, pulls you off the street, which you think might be good, but you're sitting in a hospital with a prisoner or a psycho, or you're sitting in an apartment all night, just you and a dead body.
Right. Yeah.
Until the
Nah,
ME got there, which
still the
could
same.
be 5-10 hours. It might even go. You might have to wait for relief for the next shift.
That's right.
And
That's right.
you did these terrible jobs. When you get a DOA, I'm not talking. It's always fresh. They didn't just die an hour ago. They could be sitting there a month,
Especially in the
6 months,
summertime.
and there's rigor mortis, and there's smells, and
Yep.
there's animals and insects, and it gets pretty disgusting. And you got to stay with it.
Yep.
And just to tell a sort of like a funny story, or I thought it was weird at the time, or something. I was there on my first DOA when I got picked up to go there. It was just me and this DOA, and he was laying in the bed. It was a big bed, but there was nowhere else to sit. And I sort of sat in the bed there for a while. After a while, I was laying down next to this guy.
No, you were laying next to the DOA?
Well, there was a couple of feet between us. It was a king-size bed, thank God.
How long were you there?
I was there a couple of hours, but you look at the chairs, and other rooms had roaches and stuff, and I had to lay down. I was dead tired. So I laid there for a while. And when I told my
No.
family or friends is, when you go home as a rookie and you tell stories of things that you encounter during your shift, they're like amazed. People would, the mouth is hanging open, and you say, yeah, I went to this apartment and the guy hung himself. And he's just hanging there. Or I went to a garage once and a guy put a shotgun under his throat and blew his head off. And we're walking in, and on the ceiling is his brains and skull and blood, and it's like dripping on us. Yeah,
No
back
way.
then, this was way before AIDS and stuff, and when people getting HIV and AIDS and
Hepatitis.
or tuberculosis. We never thought there was no such thing. You went out with rubber gloves. Your hands were in blood. You would help a person who got shot or stabbed. You have blood on you all the time.
Wow.
That was like routine stuff. If you worked in what they call today, I guess to be polite, they call them A houses, but they were shitholes. They were ghetto precincts. Where the action is. If you're in like Harlem, Bed-Stuy, South Bronx, each borough has their, bad areas.
Yep.
And you were responding to gunshot wounds, stabbings, domestics, people getting hit over the head with an iron, a lead pipe, and you got blood on you all the time. No one even thought of this stuff. No one ever thought you could get AIDS or get sick or catch something from mixing blood or semen. I had a girl once. We were driving. I was in plain clothes. I had a guy run over to our car, right? And we knew him. He was like a CI, which is a confidential informer. And he runs over and he tells us, just me and my partner, tells us, my wife is abducted by the local gang. Like the Savage Skulls or the Nomad. So we knew where their headquarters was, so we didn't call for help yet. We went in on our own, right? So we kick in this door, and there's like 50 guys in this room, a dungeon, a basement, an abandoned building. And they're raping this girl one after another. And while the others are raping her, there's guys masturbating onto her. She was covered in sperm. It looked like the Blob from the 50s. The movie was a blob. And we had to get her out of there. We got blood on us. Oh, so we run in to break this up with our nightsticks, and we're just cracking heads, and guys are running out in all different directions and stuff. And we're mixing blood and semen. And they actually, after they took her to the hospital, I only saw this twice in my whole career. My career was only 14 years long, by the way, which was cut short due to a line of duty injury. But only 2 times I seen this, where they got to the hospital, and after they took her out of the ambulance, there was a garden hose. There's a hose near the emergency room, and they had to spray down the ambulance to take out all this semen and blood.
Oh, my
The only other time I saw this was a time where we took a girl to a hospital. It was a barricaded situation, right? And I was in uniform at the time. I was a rookie. I was under a year because after a year, I went into plain clothes. So we get this barricade situation, and we all respond. And what it was this man holding originally his wife and two kids, a boy and a girl, hostage in an apartment, threatening to kill them over domestic quarrel, right? So we get there, and we didn't have
Negotiators.
hostage negotiators at the time. There was no kind of stuff like that invented or created. So we tried to talk them out, and what happened was the wife escaped with the son, right? And that's how we got the call. She says her husband is holding the girl, the little 6 or 7-year-old girl, very cute, long hair, Spanish girl. And we get there, and he's holding a knife to her. And we're trying to talk to him and everything. And I feel my finger. We all had guns pointed at him because we didn't want him to harm this girl, right? And I haven't shot anybody yet. With, going on future in my career, I wound up having to use my weapon 15 times and shooting 8 perpetrators and killing 4. But I had my finger on the trigger, and all of a sudden this guy took this knife and cut the girl's arm off in front of us. And I was ready to pull the trigger, and before I could tighten my finger, and that takes a second, the guy took the knife and cut his own head off. So we rushed this girl, we put her in an ambulance, and that was another time she just bled out and died. And they had to hose out that ambulance. It was so full of blood. It was a horrible scene. But these are things that the public don't know that police officers see. If you're in a bad precinct, you're going to see this stuff on a daily basis. And that's why alcohol is very prevalent in the police culture. And some guys, they're only humans, police officers, that can't handle things, and there's a high suicide rate, which there still is today, even back then. And I had a good friend of mine, a guy named Nicky, that was a very good friend of mine. We went through the academy together, and he couldn't handle it. And he was a good-looking, healthy, young guy, girlfriends, good job as a police officer, and he committed suicide.
How did you handle it?
I don't know. I was able to handle it. It didn't bother me. I don't know why. I can't say why. No one knows. You don't think, you want to think you could meet these things you're going to run into. If you have to use your weapon or take a life, how it'll affect you. And you never know. You train for these things. You try to be combat ready. You try to get your mind straight, but you don't know what happens. In my cases, it didn't bother me because the other side of taking a life is if you're justified, you're saving a life or multiple lives. You have to be saving your own life or your partner's life or a civilian's life to be legally able to use deadly physical force. And in all my shootings, I was found justifiable. And it didn't affect me because I guess I always looked on the side that I saved a life. I don't want to think of that I took a life that I wasn't supposed to take and I was doing the wrong thing, but they were career criminals that if they didn't take a life at that moment, obviously or probably would have taken a life in the future. And I was found justified. And you're held very accountable. They say the years I was on or going back past that it was the Wild West and the police weren't checked. But believe me, we were seriously checked from multiple agencies. You're checked by the DA's office. You're checked by the shooting teams. You're internal affairs. You're checked by the local detectives, borough detectives. You're examined 100 different ways. And the police department not only checks what you did, they have to trace every bullet, wherever it went. If it hit any other property or hit any other person, they find the trajectory and trace every bullet and have to be accounted for. Not only your actions, but every bullet from both sides, the perpetrator's bullets. You were always checked very thoroughly, even though people believe it was wild back then, but you were checked on. And there's always accountability and a grand jury.
Right.
on top of that.
Yeah. So you
So
had,
there's not only policing, police officers and investigators and detectives, there's civilians that check it out. Because if you take a life, you must go before a grand jury, civilians or cops. And those are civilians that are going to review all the evidence that's presented by the district attorney, the internal affairs, and detectives and investigators that check out this shooting.
I think policing had to have been in your purpose, because for somebody to go through the things that you just mentioned that I've never seen throughout the course of my 17-year career, and to be able to push on day to day to day, like there's only so much training that can help you get through that.
That's correct. You don't know how you're going to react until you're in a certain position. Thank God I was able to prove my mettle and, go through this. I'll tell you what did stop, not slowed me down or stopped me, but give me pause to think, is any time I saw a police officer get shot and killed. In the 70s, we were also facing the Black Liberation Army, which was an offshoot of the Black Panthers, and they were ambushing cops. And their targets, they specifically targeted what they called salt and pepper teams or black and white team.
Black and white teams.
Yeah, they call them salt and
Salt
pepper
and pepper.
teams.
Wow.
And they would purposely do that to get a black officer and a white officer together, and they would ambush them. That was the Black Panthers didn't even like these people because they were even more violent than them. They were really very violent, and they wanted to prove their cause by going against the government and the establishment. And they were shooting cops across the America. They were from New York
State
to California, and they were targeting these teams. And when I would see an officer killed, and I went to every funeral during the 70s, I felt it was my calling to do that. I had to go to every funeral, and it would make me say that could have been me. That could have been my partner. It could have been my friend or my brother officer. It just gave you pause, but then you would snap back and you would realize you have to go back out there and protect the public and the other officers. And I was assigned for months to follow police cars. That was our job, to see that they weren't getting set up for ambush. And we would ride, and our unit, it was the 4-1 anti-crime, we went out and bought our own vests, and we bought our own shotguns and had them sent back to the company and had them sawed off to legal 18 inches. Well, it was 18 and a quarter. Our whole unit, there were 20 to 21 guys in the unit, bought 20 vests, which were very heavy back then, and they were very hard to wear. But we bought our own shotguns, and guys were carrying their own guns that they brought back from Vietnam, because a lot of police officers back then were veterans. That was something that was an easy crossover, and they gave preference to veterans to come on the job. So we had a lot of guys that had experience in combat and discipline and training. And we had to protect officers. We would follow the radio cars. They would get a call for, say, a family disturbance or whatever it might be. We would follow them from, say, 5, 10 car lengths back. And we'd be heavily armed and make sure the officers could do their jobs.
So you were literally at war.
It was a war during the 70s. The BLA, the Black Liberation Army, was targeting police everywhere. And then they were also targeting banks and armored cars to get money to carry on their causes.
Wow.
It was a very rough time in policing across the nation.
Sure.
Getting back to where I say where officers worked in very tough precincts, the A houses. But when you're a police officer anywhere in this country, and even in like outside of New York City or outside of big cities, police officers are always in danger because criminals have to cross lines and are driving cars. So you could be an officer in a very wealthy or very safe community, but bad guys are driving through, and you stop a car, you have no idea that who they killed or what they robbed. They think, in a criminal's mind, they think every officer knows what they did or they're looking for them. These officers are working on the blind. Even with all the technology today, they could have killed somebody. They think they're being looked for, and you're stopping them for a red light or going through a stop sign, and you're doing a routine summons in a quiet town, and they'll blow you away. They'll shoot you.
100%. Were they
You know,
ever?
and they're not even planning that, but they're getting stopped thinking, you know, you're going to take away their freedom. You know, that's another big responsibility that police officers have. When you're dealing with the public and you're making arrests, you're taking away someone's freedom. That's the most important thing you have in your life, you know, is your freedom. Some people don't deserve it and don't deserve to be in the communities, but it's a police officer's job to do that, and people will fight you for that.
Now, you say the hardest thing for you is seeing a police officer killed or hearing about a police officer killed. You went to many police funerals. Within the tenure of your career, have you personally been with a police officer that was shot other than yourself,
Oh, I had a lot of police officers.
or killed while working with them?
In the 4-1, we had Officer Kenny Mann was killed. I was off duty at the time, but he was once my partner, and I responded. The bosses called us from our unit. I actually heard it on the radio, but it just said an officer in the South Bronx, and I was trying to get more information, and then I got a call that it was Officer Kenny Mann, and it was right before Christmas back in '74, I think it was. And I responded right away, and we were all given assignments to try to catch this guy. And I was also working with an officer, Cal Unga. With me and him, we got into a shootout personally, and he got wounded very seriously. He took 7 hits, 5 direct, and 1 in the sac of the heart that holds fluid. But he was saved, and I killed the guy that shot him. And that whole entire shootout took place within 3 feet or less.
What was that story?
Well, he wasn't my direct partner. He was in our unit, the 4-1 anti-crime, and we went to court that day. We were both assigned to court in different cases. And then I came back from court, and he came back from court. And the boss put us together to go out on a day shift on anti-crime patrol. And we were patrolling. We started around noon, and around 2 o'clock, a call came in over the radio of a burglary in progress. Now, normally, anti-crime wouldn't respond to a burglary in progress because we're not supposed to respond to radio runs that uniforms would handle. As anti-crime, you're supposed to pick up your own suspects or leads and follow it and try to make an arrest. But when you're working in a heavy precinct, it was very common for anti-crime to back up uniform officers on jobs because other officers are busy with jobs, and you want to do backup so officers don't get hurt. And when people see 2 or 4 officers, 4 officers instead of 2 there, you know, they think twice before doing something. So you give backup. You know, not like I was discussing earlier when you see 20 guys at a job today.
Yeah.
They're there because they don't know what to do and how they should do it.
It's like a council session.
Yeah, everyone's scared to take a direct action.
Yeah,
They want to
yep.
call other officers. And like I say, they can't restrict. If they have to fight, if someone resists, you need more officers to hold each arm and each leg. It gets a little ridiculous. But back then, if you saw 4 officers at a scene, that was a big show of force instead of 1 or 2. So we backed them up, and ironically, we got there first because we were closer. So as we were getting there, the calls coming in escalated from a burglary, which is normally someone's burglarizing a home and no one's there. They're breaking in while you're at work,
Yep.
and they're going to burglarize you. It's not a robbery, where robbery is force. So as we were getting closer, actually getting there, arriving at the scene, the calls came in, a girl calling for assistance, calling for help. Now it's more like a home invasion. So we get there and we run up the stairs. Obviously, it's always on the top floor. We get there and we see the door broken in. You can see the door frame was broke and the door was ajar about 6 inches. And inside, we could hear from inside a girl screaming. So now we can't wait for the uniforms, even though they might be a minute or 50 seconds behind us. You have to go in as a police officer when you hear a girl screaming for help, which we did. And it was 2 p.m. We get in there, and it was pitch black. They had cardboard, curtains, sheets, everything on the windows. So we couldn't see a thing. And your eyes are trying to adjust, but it's pitch black. And what we later learned is we came into like a living room area, and off to the left was a kitchen, living room sort of to the right, and straight ahead was a bathroom, and at the end of the hallway, and then to the right was a bedroom. And we hear the screams, and we're working our way through the darkness, and all of a sudden, a man appears in front of us, which we still couldn't see.
Wow.
He jumped out of the bedroom, and we're in the hallway, only about 3-4 feet wide, and all of a sudden, gunfire erupts, and he just opens fire on us, which we later learned was only 3 feet away. And right away, I see my partner get hit. This is all happening in 1, 2, 3 seconds. He gets hit, but he's firing as he goes down, and I'm firing at the muzzle flash. I still can't see a person.
All you see is a muzzle flash.
That's all you could see. And now we're seeing is really like what strobe lights.
Oh, my
Because
goodness.
my partner fires 6 rounds, the perpetrator fires 6 rounds, and I fire 5. Don't ask me why. I was in that second. They always teach you to hold on to 1 round. And
these are revolvers.
These are revolvers. Yeah, we didn't have automatics back then. Nobody in the police department really carried automatics. First of all, they weren't authorized. Second of all, they weren't efficient enough because they would jam. What good is 15 rounds if the first one jams?
Right.
So we were only trained in revolvers, and revolvers needed no maintenance. If you didn't do nothing for 20 years, that gun still worked.
Sure.
So we had revolvers, and we got this strobe light effect going on, flashing the weapons and the firing, and bullets are ricocheting in the hallway too. My partner got 5 direct hits, and 2 ricochets hit him, which later I saw in the hospital removed 1 from his forearm. They took out with a tweezer, and 1 in his back. But he took 5 hits to the body. Now the perpetrator tries to run past me, which I still had this 1 bullet. And this is all in 1-2 second matter, right? And I grab him by his trap, and because he had no shirt on.
So you grab him
So
right here.
I physically grabbed him with my left hand, and he still had the gun in his hand, and he runs into me, and I fire my last shot pressed against his body, right? And ironically, I had it pressed against his nipple because his nipple was never found. And
His nipple was never found.
No, it disintegrated. I shot him right on the nipple into his chest and killing him right there. Now, the backstory to this is pretty, not funny, but it's ironic or something. But like I said earlier, how they do a big investigation and they trace every bullet and they check every minor detail. So I gave my story. Back then, you gave your story. You gave up what you did because it's fresh in your mind. 5 seconds later, when the bosses are arriving, 5 minutes later, they're questioning, what happened? What happened? And you tell your story. And then officers had to race my partner to the scene. And they carried him down. We didn't even wait for an ambulance. So they carried him downstairs. And it was on a very narrow street, Fox Street. And you have all these police cars there. So an ambulance really couldn't get there. When you think about it, we couldn't get him out of there. He's put in the back seat of a car, and with this officer, Billy Rath, that was responding, put him in his car, and Billy Rath tried to stem the flow of the blood, putting his fingers in the wounds.
Wow.
And now they're bumping into radio cars to try to back him up, and everyone's trying to race to their cars to get out of the way. And they were smart enough, the officers, to radio ahead to communications and tell them to have highway blocked off every intersection so he could race him to the hospital. So he raced him to Jacoby Hospital, and they saved his life, right? And it was like you have a light and siren in police cars, but you still got to give a fraction of a second to slow down at an intersection because if you're going against the light. But highway blocked every intersection, so it was like a straight path, like a raceway, and that saved his life too. So anyway, I give my story, and I tell it like I just told it to you and your audience right now. So the detectives do all the paperwork, and everything's verified, and the ME calls them down, and they're doing an autopsy on the perpetrator, the guy I killed, and they say the ME tells the detectives, "You have an execution here. This officer pressed his gun against him and shot." So the detective said, "That's just how he testified. It's good." Because the ME, being an outside from the police department, like I said, there's
Wow.
meticulous investigation and thorough investigation. The ME, this guy wasn't wearing a shirt. That's why I was able to grab his trap. But they saw on his skin, they could tell the powder burns of what this. Now, I would have testified, "Oh, I was like 5 feet away or 3 feet away, and I fired and stopped this threat." I would have been indicted because then they would say, "No, this guy pressed the gun." But I testified with him running into me with the gun in his hand. My gun, I didn't press it against him, but it was pressed against him because of the contact that we made, and that I fired at point blank range, shooting this guy. And it all fell in line with how I testified and what the evidence showed. But if I would have testified differently, that evidence was there. Powder burns on the skin and inside the body. But it coincided with what I said, and then I was justifiable. But these are the things that you have to deal with. And I didn't think of taking this guy's life. I didn't even know I was going to be in this situation. But all I thought about after that shooting, my only concern was that my partner recover. That's all I could think about was my partner getting better.
Man, this is a crazy time. Did your average police officer during this era get into a shooting?
Shootings, no matter where you work, are rare. There's officers that go 20, 25, 30 years, never used their gun, never fired their gun.
Yeah.
We used to have our guns out on car stops. That's another thing. Guns were out all the time in case you needed it. Didn't mean you were going to use it, but it's a show of force, and you would be ready if you needed it in a second's notice. Where today, you got to do reports, and there's all kinds of things if you even take your gun out of the holster. I have a nephew who's on a job outside of New York City where I didn't even notice, and he explained it to me. If he pulls his gun out, it automatically at that second activates his body cam.
Wow. That's great.
It's incredible stuff that they have today. Technology and the rules of engagement and stuff are very different. One rule will always remain the same is you could use deadly physical force if deadly physical force is being used on you. And that's when or a third party, where you'd be justifiable in using deadly physical force.
What was it about you that it just seemed like these circumstances would come where you had to use deadly physical force more than the average?
I used it much more. I was in shooting. I actually averaged out to more than once a year for my 14 years because I was in 14 shooting incidents. 2 of them were with dogs, but they were all justifiable, obviously.
Right.
But I was always out there. I was always on the hunt. I always wanted to make arrests. I pretty much made an arrest. I would say every day I worked. Either me or my partner. I was motivated.
What motivated you to want to make arrests?
I just felt I wanted to get the bad guys off the street, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the action. I never drank in my life. I still don't. I'm going to be 77 in a couple of months. I never drank. I never did drugs. I was always into physical fitness and bodybuilding, and I took my job very, very seriously in all aspects of it. And I felt you had to be combat ready because I worked in doing my job. I did guns and robberies, anti-crime. Even when I became a detective, I was doing pickup arrests, and the boss would assign all the robbery cases or gun cases to me. And I also made pickup arrests and did investigations on my own. I was very motivated, and I felt when you go to work to be ready for it. I had like a warrior or combat mindset. I'd like to go to work well-fed, well-rested, and after I worked out and I felt pumped up, I felt I was ready to get into these situations. And like I said, going back to the BLA, Black Liberation Army, I was always hunting for them, and I always had pictures of them. There was like 6 or 7 that were predominant in our area, and I would have them on my nightstand, like most 99% of people would have of their kids or their wife on their nightstand. I would have pictures when I woke up. I would see them. I had them on my home desk. I had them on my work desk.
Wow.
I had them on the dashboard of my cars. One of my goals was to run into them and capture them, take them off the street so they couldn't hurt civilians or other cops, which they were looking to kill cops. They didn't care if civilians got in the way. That's one of, even if they wanted to target just cops, they're firing bullets and automatic weapons, and they would, they didn't care about civilians or children in the area. And I wanted to get them off the street, and I never ran into them. I missed them, a couple of them, by seconds or minutes, but this was that kept me on my toes and motivated. And I always wanted an arrest. I didn't care if I had a wedding to go to, or a ball game, or I had to go to gym. I saw officers like that, and I wanted to emulate them. And I saw them with the medals and making these great arrests, and I was inspired. I was inspired, like young kids would get inspired by ball players.
Yeah.
Some kids would see Mickey Mantle or Michael Jordan or Mickey Mays or Willie Mays, and they wanted to be like that. I wanted to be like these cops. They were my heroes. I went into this I'd see them making these arrests, and one of my things was I was a rookie, and I saw these guys coming in, and later on I became partners with some of these guys. It was like, you're playing Little League Baseball, and the next thing you're on the Yankees. I wanted to be in a busy house, because when you go to a busy house, you see things that officers wouldn't see in 20 years. And you get involved in things and just see things that the underbelly of the city, that because people could go home and sleep in their beds at night peacefully, that you're dealing with. I thrived on it, and I enjoyed it. And
quick question: did you kind of have to make it into like you just compared it to sports in a way, right? Did you kind of have to make it into having like a competitive nature? I interviewed somebody else, and he said the same thing, to the point where it's, the medals, like you compared it to other police officers that you saw that you looked up to. Did you kind of did you have
honest,
to?
It got a little competitive.
So yeah, did you kind of have to make it into that in order for you to survive, or in order for you to?
Well, not to survive, but I thrived on it. I'll be honest.
Okay.
I enjoyed being in the spotlight.
Or motivate you during those tough times in some way, shape, or form,
Yeah.
Because that's hard to see every day, a lot of those traumatic
I don't know
events.
why I was able to handle it. Maybe I tried to talk myself into being mentally prepared and physically. I was always physically prepared for this, because I always worked out and I had discipline.
Yeah.
I didn't eat garbage. I didn't drink. I do drugs. I never smoked. I never did those three things.
Yeah.
And I was exposed to it.
Right.
Being
of course,
police
especially in
officer,
that era.
I never even drank coffee.
Really? Still.
Still.
Why?
I just felt in my mind back when I was 12 years old, I programmed all these things to be bad for me.
At 12?
Yeah. I stopped eating. I didn't eat candy, cake, cookies, sweets. I don't.
Wow.
I didn't drink coffee. I didn't do that stuff. I stayed away from alcohol. I felt, especially alcohol, I felt it could make you weak. You know what I mean? Like, I had to be on my game, on and off duty. I made over 105 off-duty arrests. That's more than
Off-duty.
Off-duty. I made from petty larceny to double homicide, off-duty. I grabbed mafia guys with guns.
105 off-duty arrests.
Yeah. It just showed you I was motivated, on and off duty. Nothing stopped me. I just ate it up. Across my back, I have a tattoo across my back that says, "The rush was worth the risk."
What has been the most fulfilling for you? Like, what was your sense of fulfillment while on the job, and with going back and in retrospect and thinking, with you being retired, what gave you the most fulfillment?
Fulfillment was when you take a really dangerous guy off the street. And also, I would mix it up with the promotions I had on the job when I became a detective. When you get a promotion, you feel like your peers recognize your success. You know, like it's nice to be applauded, and being a detective, well, being an officer when you're being made detective, it's a very big step. And then I made grade, and I was due to get first grade, which is, to me, I thought it, in my mind, in a lot of detectives' mind and officers, it's a more prestigious position than a captain, being a first grade detective.
Sure.
And in my time, it's much different than it was today. Today, it's just very different.
Yeah.
When I was on, there
It's a
was
lot of-
only 115 first graders in the entire city. There was only 230 second graders, which I was.
How
And
big
the rest,
how big was the force?
oh, it was 38,000.
Wow.
And then the rest were detectives, a couple of thousand, were third graders. Now, I was told the year I got hurt very bad, and I was put off the job. We'll go into that later if we have time. But I was told I was getting promoted that year. I was getting first grade. I had, all the recommendations ready. It was sort of in place. And most big promotions occur around Thanksgiving and Christmas. That's tradition in the police department. And I was in that group, but I got hurt in August. And I had letters I have on my wall, which after this podcast, we've talked before. I'm invited you to my home for dinner and stuff.
Can't wait.
Because you're not only my podcaster here, you're my friend.
That's right.
And you're coming to my house for dinner, and you're going to see. And I had letters that show I led the city in arrests in the whole detective bureau for 5 consecutive years. I made the most arrests, and I made thousands and thousands of assists where I assisted officers, or where my partner takes an arrest. I get the assist, but in my name alone, I've made 2,000 arrests in 14 years. But my 105 off-duty arrests is sometimes more than many officers have made in their career of 20 or 25 years.
That's amazing.
But I just ate it up. I had a purpose. It was more than a profession or a job. It was way beyond a job for me. I just ate it up. It was my life, actually.
Yeah.
You hear these things, oh, you bleed blue. I bled blue. I mean, I've got a lot of injuries. I've killed a few people on the line of duty. I shot people. But I put a lot of people in the hospital. But a lot of people put me in the hospital. I got my lumps and bumps, and I can't even tell you how many broken bones that I got along the way too. But it didn't stop me until my last accident. That was really big, my last line of duty.
So I want to ask you this: your tattoo, what is it again? That's on your back?
Across my back it says, "The rush was worth the risk." I had that adrenaline rush.
So the rush.
It was like I was on a human body. My body produced a drug. That was the drug.
So that's what I want to get at.
Adrenaline.
That's what I want to get at. The rush was worth
the risk.
the risk.
The risks that I took.
So here's my thing, and this is what I want to ask. Many police officers, we spoke about coping mechanisms, right? We talked about alcohol. We talked about maybe even prescription drugs. I speak about pornography, sexual addiction, things like that. Do you feel like that adrenaline and that rush
Kept me going.
was a form of a coping mechanism for you?
I don't know exactly how to relate it to that, but I could just say it definitely kept me going.
Okay.
I thrived on it. To
Yeah.
me, I guess it was like a junkie's heroin.
Right. So yeah, I would say
that,
with
I
you saying
never
it like
took
that.
a drug, but
yeah.
my body produced this adrenaline
Okay.
that
yeah. So,
drove me.
right.
I needed it. Do you know I'm out 42 years, and I know that policing has changed, but there's nothing I do in my life that gives me that
That
feeling
rush.
of being a police officer.
If you did not get that, if you did not get an arrest, if you were not being active, what did that do for you and your being?
I felt down. I guess that was my withdrawal.
Okay.
I felt, man, I can't believe I missed a day and I didn't make an arrest.
Wow.
I didn't get a big, I got to get an arrest tomorrow.
Wow.
I felt driven.
Yeah.
I had a purpose. It was a purpose over pension.
There you go.
I never thought about a pension. I thought they'd have to pry me out of this job with a crowbar. In New York City, you can't hit the age of 63. You must get out before. That's the retirement age. So you have lost time, vacation, terminal leave. Everybody leaves. If not everybody, the guys leave way before. But you got to get out some part of your early 62.
Yeah.
You cannot hit 63 and be a police officer, detective, sergeant, lieutenant, cap. You have to retire. It's mandatory.
Right.
I never thought I'd see that. I always felt I'd get killed in the line of duty. I thought something would happen to me, but I never even thought of it getting to my age. I never thought I used to think 30 was old. Now I think 60 is young. Life turned around.
Yeah.
I never thought I'd see this age,
With some of the messages that I put out on social media, especially when it comes down to mental health, a lot of people respond to my posts with, you can't make being a police officer your identity. When you do that and you're not a police officer anymore, then that's where you feel like you are stripped of who it is.
I feel that way, Lenny.
You feel like that?
Yeah.
Wow.
I think being a police officer, in my case, I'm not saying all, but police officers, I'm speak for myself.
Sure.
It was my identity.
And I appreciate your honesty. I appreciate your honesty.
It was my identity. I felt I was blue through and through. I didn't see black, white, nothing. I was blue. And I always felt I did my job fairly. I wasn't prejudiced or nothing like that. I did my job fairly. I got guys out of jail that didn't do a crime, or guys were investigating. I proved them innocent on serious crimes. I brought in guys. We had guys that mugged my mother, and I determined that my mother couldn't make an ID.
Wow.
And I had a guy for a murder, and I got him off because I proved that he was justified in what he did.
Wow.
I still think that police is my identity. I do all these podcasts. I wrote a book. I do speeches. I've had TV shows. I've done dozens and dozens of podcasts. I still feel people say Ralph the cop or Ralph the detective. It's my life. I didn't want it that way. I didn't think it would be that way. It became that way. It became me.
Yeah. When people,
I'll be honest about it.
yeah, no, that's.
I still
love it.
respect officers. I think they do the greatest job in the world. I think it's a calling. I think it's a purpose. I'm still pro police. Over the years, I'll tell you something funny. Over the years, when I was a cop, I would pull over any cop stopping a car. I pull over. I say, I'm a police officer, and I'll back you up and help you. Today, I find they're against me. They don't want me to pull over. Guys, they shoo you away. Get lost. They don't want help. They don't know if I'm a cop, I guess. Maybe I don't look like a cop. I never looked like a cop. But I guess that helped me in my career.
Yeah.
Muscles, tattoos, the way I dress.
Yep.
I was in the squad 10 years. I never wore a suit and tie.
Really?
I dressed like anti-crime. And my bosses let me because I brought in the numbers. I made my bosses look good. But now they don't want you pulling over and assisting them. But over the years, I don't know how that faded out. I would always help police.
Yeah.
Back them up, especially when I see them work alone. The troopers still appreciate it. I pulled over once. I was going up 684, and I saw a trooper pulling over 6 people, right? And 6 people were in one car. So I pull over right away. I say, I'm a police officer. Can I help? He says to me, yeah, cover them. So I had pull out my gun. I covered him, and he searched the car and found boxes of drugs.
Wow.
And then just when he was ready to cuff him, 2 other state trooper cars pulled up. So they just said, thank you, and I was on my way. Just 2 days ago, I pulled over. I saw a trooper by himself on the highway, and he had 3 people in the car. I pulled over. I said, police officer, you need anything? He said, no, I'm good. And then I leave. But I would like to assist them. I would still want to help them. I would love to do things.
So for police officers that do have that same passion as you in being a police officer and kind of identifying or letting that define their identity, is there any advice that you would give them?
Well, stay true to yourself. If that's what you want to do,
Mm-hmm.
do it good. Be alert, be fair, be combat ready, be on your game. Anything you do. You see, like I said before, with equating today's officers, they get out early or they never go past 20. But they use all that experience. They use that.
Right.
They know people. They know how to talk. They know how to handle situations. It's definitely a learning curve. No matter what you do in life, you're going to know what you learned from that police department because you started obviously at a young age, and it gets inbred into you. So the smart guys would take it forward.
Do you feel like you, unfortunately, having to leave the police department earlier than what you would have wanted affected you more than some of the things that you experienced while on the job?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah, I wish I could have stayed in. I handled the things I saw on the job, and I loved learning from the job, and I loved doing the job, and I loved the action, and I loved the respect we got. I'm not saying we didn't have guys that were cop fighters. I mean, obviously, I talked about guys that wanted to kill people, kill cops, but overall, and we still have police today still get a lot of respect. It's the small percentage that are very loud. I equivalent to it to like the squeaky wheel effect. 3 of the wheels on a shopping cart are going smooth. You're going to give oil to the one squeaky wheel.
Yeah.
So it's a small percentage that are very vocal, that get all the news coverage and all that. But most people respect it. It's a noble job, being a police officer. But it was more shown back then. The people that hate you get more media attention today with all the cameras and videos. They get a lot of attention. How they and they like handcuff the police more, and you see these people abusing police, and the police are, I'll say, they're much more restrained. Like I said, we use our nightstick sometimes. You didn't have to arrest somebody, but you might have taught them a lesson.
Right.
And everybody made out. They didn't get an arrest record. They learned to respect the police or the law, or wouldn't do what they did again, and they wouldn't mess with the police. And you got it across what you wanted to get across without maybe ruining someone's record if it didn't have to be. I was always scared of the police. Not scared of the police. I respected the police. I wouldn't do something wrong in front of them. I wouldn't do something wrong anyway. I was brought up that way.
So if we were policing in your era, and say somebody like me, I left before 20 years because I realized that the job wasn't for me, would that be frowned upon?
No, because you did 17 years, a lot of time. You did more time than me. But not frowned. Today it wouldn't be frowned upon.
Well, back then.
Back then, well, 17 is still a lot of years.
But it's still not. Sometimes people try to disqualify me and what it is that I know because I didn't make it to 20 years, but I still did my time.
Oh,
right?
You did 17
I still did my time, and I have enough to be able to talk about this profession.
Maybe you had something better to go in there. You could tired of it. You had a better deal to go to, or something else you wanted to pursue, and the opportunity was there.
Right. So my reason for bringing that up is because people
I wouldn't
often
disrespect you for that.
People often say that back
you
then.
did more time than me.
But you were compensated for it, and it's because it was in the line of duty in which you left the job. But the reason why I asked that is because as you're talking about it, and, as far as urban legend is concerned, people say the cops back then were tougher. They didn't care about the mental health issues. And they didn't care about
show it, that's for sure.
Right.
That's
that's why I asked that question. That's why I asked that question.
Well, not 17 years. A lot of guys vested out. That's why they changed it. Guys wanted to leave for one reason or another. You could be sick of it, tired of it. In 17 years, I would think that you would know by then it wasn't for you. Unless they changed your assignments and made it miserable for you. Or other guys, like I said, had an opportunity to do something else that they really got into.
Yeah.
Or you had an opportunity that presented itself and it couldn't wait 3 years.
Right. And that's what it was for me. It was I was building things up outside of the job, and I wanted to make sure that
you would get the respect with 17 years. I mean, that's real time. Today, guys, the average time in the job today is probably 5 years.
Well, if it is 5 years, it's usually because they're transferring to another department, not just flat out leaving law enforcement.
Right.
They're going to another department or something like that. They're using NYPD as a stepping stone because now Suffolk County, Nassau County, they're losing a lot of...
the best training is in the NYPD.
It is. There is good training, but they have scaled back on some things. If you can get the training that you normally get as a senior officer and you can parlay that into something else.
I mean, you realize when I was on, it was before cell phones, before beepers. We had nothing.
I know.
There was no communication. You know, I look back, I walk out of my house. If I don't have my cell phone, you say you're like disconnected from the world. We had nothing back then. If we had cell phones, I can't even imagine what my arrest record would look like because I would have CIs calling me. They would say, Ralph, the guy on the corner has a gun. They would have to reach out to the precinct. Precinct has to reach out to me. I got to get back to them. Meet this guy at this place. It was crazy. I don't even know how we did it when you look back at technology today.
With everything that you've gone through over these years, right, and all of the shootings, do you have a few profound ones that replay in your head or you just can't get out of your mind that mess you up in any way, shape, or form?
No, I don't think any of them messed me up. Like I said, what messes me up when I saw a cop get shot or killed.
Yeah.
You know, because you know what I say? I say, man, that so easily could have been me.
Right.
You know, it could have so easily be me or my partner. And you know, your partner is like the closest thing in the world to you.
Well, what was your?
I had great partners.
What was your closest call?
Well, the one I just told you about with Calunga, but I had other ones. I had a guy that was shooting at me multiple times and reloaded his gun two times.
Oh no!
You know, and the
2 or 3 times he reloaded
a revolver. And I couldn't seem to stop him at the time. I was shooting and I had a clear shot. I'll tell you the story. We went out on patrol. It was like late at night, and we were in an unmarked yellow cab when they started using those.
Okay.
This is way back. We used to take cars out of the pound. We used to use our own cars. We would just take license plates in the property clerk, put them on our cars.
You have a commandeer car?
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Oh,
I'll
man.
tell you a funny one about a shooting in Manhattan I had.
Okay.
Off duty when I took a cab. And, so let me get back to this one.
Okay.
So we were on patrol in a yellow cab, right? And we were driving around, and we spotted this group of kids. They were all about 14 to 17, 14 to 18. And they didn't look good. We followed them. And we were cruising around, keeping them under, surveillance. And they would start approaching people and asking for money. And at first, it didn't seem like it was much. They ask for money. But then at a certain point, it becomes like a robbery or an intimidation robbery. You get like 7, 8 kids around you, and they say, they don't ask for money. Could you give me $1? Or give me $1.
Yeah.
And now they're standing around you.
Right.
You feel threatened.
Of course.
That's an intimidation robbery.
Yeah.
And at some point they say, give me your money. So anyway, we're following them. And what happened was we see them get around, and all of a sudden, the guy they get around, an older guy, he was like in his late 30s. I think, if I remember correctly, he was like 35 or 37. And all of a sudden, we thinking he's the victim. All of a sudden, he pulls out a gun and shoots this 15-year-old right in the chest in front of us. We're right across 4 lanes of traffic watching this. And all of a sudden, the crowd runs, right? And this one kid flies back on his back, shot in the chest, and blood's flying out. My partner was driving. I was in the back seat. He just shoots across the lanes of traffic. There's no real traffic at the time because it was later at night. Shoots across Prospect Avenue. He shoots across there, and we jump out of the car. My partner has the radio, and he's calling for backup and for an ambulance for the kid immediately. He says, we got a kid shot, send an ambulance, and send help. I jump out. We both got our guns out, and we start chasing the guy. My partner, he cuts off to the left, and I go straight after the guy. So you get this picture. We're trying to triangulate the guy. Right. So the guy runs up the street, firing at me, and I'm firing at him. He gets to a certain point. I guess he ran out of bullets, put 6 at me, right? He stops and he crouches down behind the car, but I see him. And he starts to reload. I emptied my gun at him, right? Now I duck behind like a stairs, like a stoop coming out where you could go up the stairs, a few stairs into the building, or you could go down to a basement apartment. I stop there. I pull out a second gun. I always carried 2 38s. And I put my gun on the stoop, and he could only see from my eyes up, and I got the gate, the bars,
Yeah.
the staircase bars. Now my partner hasn't fired a shot yet, but he goes and he can't see the guy because he's behind the car. I got a clear shot like I'm looking at you, right? But he can't. My partner can't see him because behind the car. Now the guy reloads and starts firing one shot at me to keep me down, and one shot at my partner to keep him down. And now I start firing, but I take my time. This shootout, it was fast, but not fast. It sort of seemed in my mind like slow motion at this point because I'm lining up my shots. I'm lining the sights, which you never do. In a shootout, you just point. That's how you're taught. You point at center mass.
Do you think you were doing that because you already been
Now
in other
I
shootings?
feel because I had good cover.
No, but because you've been in other shootings as well, do you feel like that
Well, I
helped you?
felt I had cover and I could take my time
Okay,
because he really could only see my eyes up.
got you.
He'd have to be a damn good shot to get me in the forehead.
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
So I'm lining up my shots with the sights. That's pretty unheard of at this point. And I'm firing slowly. Nothing's happening. All of a sudden, my partner fires one shot. And I see the guy grab his shoulder. My partner got him. He was waiting for me. He was good. He was waiting for him because he was popping up, shooting one shot, then bending down, shooting at me. So now he reloads again. And I see him, he pops up, and my partner waited up there and got him right in the shoulder, and he goes down. Now I run over to the guy with my other gun out. Got a couple of, maybe I have 1 or 2 shots left, right? I carried 6 shots Colts, now 5 shot. That's
6 shot. Okay. Yep.
I always carried the Colt, which is the same size.
I picked that up before. You said 6 shots in the other one.
Right,
and
because
you had one
I carried
left.
Colt.
Okay.
I don't know. You see, guys used to buy the Smith & Wessons
They were
in
5.
the off duties because it was 5 shots.
Yeah.
Because they knew the M&P 19 or MP 10 was the service revolver, was a long barrel, had 6 shots. So they went out, Smith & Wesson, now it's in their mind. They go and buy the off duty
Got you.
Smith & Wesson. I bought a Colt because I wanted the extra shot. But I always carried 2 guns, so I had 12 shots.
Where'd you keep the second gun?
One was on my ankle, one was on my waist. You know? So now I'm lining up the shot. I run over because I see him grab his shoulder and goes down. And he picks up his arm and he starts to point the gun at me again while he's laying down. I'm standing over the guy. I put one right in his head. Now, when they lift him up, when the ambulance came in, they go to lift him, his brain fell out on the street because I shot him right through the forehead, right? But the thing is, when they got to the ME and we got the reports back, I hit him like 6 times in the body.
So he was on PCP or something?
He was on alcohol, I think. And he might have been on some drug, but it came up high in alcohol.
Unreal.
I was hitting him all these times, but my partner hit him with the one shot. That was the straw that broke the camel's back.
Wow.
And he went down. And the funny thing is, that was on Fox Street. That was on Prospect and Fox. I killed the guy before that on Fox Street also, on the other end. Fox Street was a bad spot for me.
Oh, man. One thing that I've always feared, and I think a lot of these cops nowadays fear it too, is making the wrong mistake, landing them in prison.
Because they took away this thing called
Indemnification.
indemnification, qualified immunity. See, when we were on, they always told us, as long as you're doing what you think is right, if you have good intentions, you know, like let's say, God forbid, thank God this never happened to me, thank God, but it could have very easily.
Right.
I could be shooting at a perpetrator because I'm under fire, and God forbid I accidentally hit a civilian, right? I hit a man, a woman, a child.
Right.
I mean, thank God that's never happened. Not because I'm a good shot or something, but the way the circumstances laid out. Maybe I wouldn't fire if I saw a kid or a person there that was innocent. But sometimes you have no choice, and you got to hope you hit your target. But thank God some people couldn't deal with that. That could be very bad. I think I don't know how I would have felt because it didn't happen, thank God. But I don't know how I would have felt if that would have put a stop to me. You know, if I shot someone who shouldn't be shot, you know, that would be a terrible thing.
Right, right.
And you don't know how an officer could handle that. That could be, even if you just wound them, say you don't kill them, you don't want to hurt someone like that.
Right. You have to
That's
try to
another
protect.
responsibility. You could be under fire. Someone's trying to kill you, and you got to defend yourself, and you shoot an innocent person. That's why the police department and other investigative units will always have to account for every bullet. If you fired 6, they want to, even if you fired in the air, even if it missed everybody and went a mile away, they do trajectory, and they want to know where that bullet is. You could have somebody shot in an apartment or a park half a mile away or something. Who knows?
Wow.
Got to be accountable.
Yeah.
Police department does all this stuff. It was a wild west, but it was accountable for police officers.
Okay. That's good to know, because I know a lot of people, they're going to ask, oh, well, they didn't have as much supervision. They weren't under the microscope.
You could have your gun out of your holster. Every time you stop a car, I had my gun out. They didn't care. As long as you did your job with good intentions and you're doing the right thing, and most guys do, 99% do. You listen, only cops are human. You're going to get some bad apples,
Right.
Who abuse their power, maybe prejudiced or racist, or, racist runs both ways. You could have a black guy that hates white guys.
Of course.
Both ways.
Absolutely.
It goes both ways.
Absolutely.
But I worked with good guys. I worked in a precinct that was a tough precinct. I worked with tough cops. And I like to think that I had black partners. Everybody was fair and everyone was honest. I mean, people won't believe me, but I say it. I'll stick by it. I swear by it.
Good. I love to hear
and
that.
I felt that way.
Yeah.
I had 2 great black partners. I had Eddie Fennell and Nat McCain. And they were like fair and tough and honest. And I learned from them. And all the guys in our unit, we had Spanish, black, and white.
Love it. Love it.
And it was in the 70s where, the department,
It was a tough time, yeah.
I was a minority. I was a Jew on the job. It was ran by I grew up in neighborhoods that were Irish, Italian, and Jewish.
Okay.
But when I came on the job...
What neighborhood is this?
What's that?
What neighborhood did you grow up in again?
In the Bronx, Kingsbridge Road.
Kingsbridge, okay.
And then I was stationed in the Bronx and exposed to blacks and Hispanics. And I didn't, it was a mile away, 2 miles away, and I didn't know the cultures were so different. You see people nodding out on the street, and violence and drugs and robberies and stuff. I wasn't exposed to that as a kid.
Wow.
It was like another sink or swim.
Now, you talked about...
But the job was mixed, but not as mixed. It was an Irish-ran job. I was a minority as a Jewish guy. But I earned my way. They saw how I handled prisoners and situations, and that I wasn't taking... They might say things, and I would talk back to them. I didn't take no shit. And, I earned respect. You earn respect.
Right.
No matter who you are.
Right.
And in the police department... You got to be thick. You had to be thick-skinned. If something happened to you, I tell my wife. My wife took the test 3 times. She got called, and I tell her she always turned it down because I wanted her to take the test to prove she could get it. And then when she, I didn't believe in girls being cops back then.
Yeah.
And especially being exposed to like one girl and 7,000 guys.
Yeah.
In each group. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I said, don't take it. But my wife is. Things would bother her. Like if they said, let's just say they called her fat or something, or how people call something. If they find your weakness,
they're gonna pry.
Use it.
They're gonna pry.
Right. So they not pry, but if they find your weakness, they use it against you.
They're gonna keep chipping at it. They're gonna keep chipping at it.
That's your weak spot, and they'll call you a name for the rest of your life. You know what I mean? So you got to stop.
You got to be able to get back at them. You have to be able to
stand up for yourself. Probably the same thing like if you're in prison.
Yeah.
If they can take advantage of you, they'll tease you to death.
Yeah.
That could have an effect on your mental health.
Yeah, you got to have a slick tongue. I say it's high school.
No, but you got to
it's high school with guns.
Yeah, exactly.
I said it the last podcast. It's high school with guns.
Like you got to earn your respect.
You do.
You ain't taking shit.
You have to hold your own.
Exactly.
You have to hold your own.
Exactly.
Yeah, if you could tell us real quick about the story where you commandeered a car.
Okay, this was funny. I was down in the village. I was off duty. I was on a date. Now that I think of it, very ironically, I made a lot of arrests when I was with girls, off duty. So anyway, I'm with this girl, and we're down in the village, and I have plans to meet my brother out in Queens, where they did street racing, right?
Where?
the connecting highways. It was
Where
so
is that?
famous back in the day. Do you know it took the police department 10 years? 10 years. They used to send highway there. They chased cars. They tried to stop it. It's right there with BQE.
Like Long Island City, over there by Long Island City, kind of?
No, it's you go over the Tri-Bow Bridge and it connects over that way.
Okay.
It's where the BQE. Anyway, it was very famous in the 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Got you. Never
So-
knew that.
It took the police department like 15 years to figure out how to stop it. Now, I was on a motorcycle then, but I raced cars there. I did all kinds of things. And
You race cars there as a cop?
Oh, as a train, yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
did too. That's
I
my first.
did.
That's my first time ever mentioning that.
It was very big back then. But there was 2 overpasses, and everybody would stand on the top. You couldn't hurt a person. And the people would line up there on Friday and Saturday nights, all 4 sides. And the overpass to overpass was exactly a quarter mile. So people would stop there on the highway, and then they would flag them, and they would race the quarter mile. And it was tremendous. Do you know how long? The police did everything in their power, and they didn't think of one thing. And when someone thought of it, it just ended it.
What was it?
Get the fire department to hose down the road.
Wow.
From the top. And there was a fire station near there.
That's great.
All they did was pump the water down. That ended everything. You can't race. Couldn't do anything with the water.
That's great.
But it took them like 15,
Wow.
17 years.
I wonder who came up with that idea.
I don't know, but they killed everything.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was going to meet him out there. So I'm on my motorcycle and coming up the East River Drive. And we were really early. You know, we were supposed to meet him whatever time. I don't know. Let's just say it was midnight. And I'm coming up, it was about 10:30. So we decide we're going to pull over. And you know there's emergency cutouts? You can only fit like
Yes.
maybe one.
Yep.
maybe
1 or 2 cars. Yep.
Right? On the East
It's like
River Drive.
It's like slanted if you have 2
Right.
cars. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yep.
So, and it was right on the East River.
Yep.
So we pull over, and I think it was 78th Street, I think it was.
Okay.
There, where you could go up a ramp, not with car, footpaths. You go up a ramp, and you could cross over to
Go over,
72, like straight over.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, we pull over, and we decide we're going to sit on a bench overlooking the water, and we start making out, right? So we're making out, and in the corner of my eye, right? Now I'm riding a Harley. I got a muscle shirt on, motorcycle dungarees. I'm tatted up, right? And I corner my eye. I see these people, and there's like 2 people at the bottom of the walkway, and I see these 3 guys go over to them, right? And I just got this funny feeling. I don't know what happened, but I just, like something makes the hairs on your neck go up.
Sixth
I
Sense.
said, sixth sense, gut feeling. So I say to the girl I'm with, listen, if they come over to us, just hit the floor, right? And I got a gun on my ankle and a gun on my waist, right? So they come up, and she's like crouching down a little, and they come up around me, and I'm ready. I got my hand like this, right on my gun. I'm ready if they say or do anything, right? And they look me over. They're a few feet away, a little further than you and me, right? So I say they're about 10 feet away. They look at me over, and they see the bike and me, and they turn around and leave. They leave. And they go up back to these people they were talking to. And I said to the girl, listen, I got to check this out. Something ain't right. So they went back to the original people. There actually were 3 there, and there were 2 at the top of the ramp. So the 3 guys go over to the 2, and now they just calmly walk away. They walk away, and they walk to the top of the ramp, which I could see. This is all heading north. We're parallel. So I go over to the people, and now they're at the top of the ramp. Now they're about maybe 100 feet away from me.
Okay.
And they're talking to them. I go over to people. I pull out my shield. I say, I'm a police officer. What'd they say to you? They start crying. They say, they just robbed us at gunpoint of all our stuff. I say, okay. Now I run up the ramp while they're talking to the people. I say, police, freeze, freeze. I get up to the ramp, and the people start saying, they robbed us, they robbed us. So I'm chasing them. Now I'm closing the gap. And they start shooting at me. One of them starts shooting. And I shoot back. They don't hit me, I don't hit them. But we're exchanging shots over the highway. Something like made up in a movie.
Was it one person shooting or was
One.
it multiple? Okay.
One.
Okay.
The other two are running. Right? They get to the end of the ramp over the highway. It goes down like on a very low slant, isn't this big, where I could see everything. And there's a car waiting for them there. They jump in the car. I start chasing the car up like, I think it was 72nd Street, whatever the street was, right? And I'm chasing. It's a one-way street, one lane. Cuts into where Gracie Mansion is over there, up that
I know
way.
exactly what you're talking about, yeah.
So I'm chasing them because they're stuck in traffic, right? Now I get up really close to them, and the car turns. The light turns, and they make the turn. They couldn't get through the light because there was cars there. There's a cab waiting at the light now at the intersection. I jump into the cab. I'm all sweated up. It was the summer. He sees the tattoos, the the boots.
Oh,
the
so he
dungaree.
thought that.
I got my gun out. I jump into the back of the cab. Now, back then, they were just starting to get partitions. Some of them didn't have them. This guy didn't have a partition. It was a yellow cab. And, you know, they used to have in the old days, they used to keep money, change in a cigar box on the seat.
Okay.
I drove cabs. I did the same thing, right? So the guy, he thinks I'm robbing him. I'm going, chase that car, chase that car. He just sees me sweating. Didn't know what I'm saying. I'm all excited. I got a gun in my hand. He takes the money. He starts throwing the money at me. I'm saying, chase that car, chase that car. Bottom line is they get away, right? The girl was smart enough. She found a payphone, because there was no phones, you know, no cell phones.
Right.
She calls 911. That was invented then. And we go to the precinct. And, you know, all cars are coming. I get to the precinct. I bring my bike over. I tell them, I'll meet you at they tell me the precinct and where it's at. So I say, I got to get my motorcycle off the highway. So I ride over to the precinct. I go in, identify myself. The duty captain comes in. No, the captain's there, right? Captain of the precinct. We do a whole interview. And he thinks I'm out of my mind, right? There's no witnesses, no complainants, nobody. You got a cop looking like me. I say, I'm in the 411 take right. He goes, so we're talking, and I'm telling him the whole thing. And he goes, did you ever use your gun before? But yeah, I was in like 5, 6, 7 cities already. He goes, I ain't talking to you no more. He walks out. It's a duty captain. So the duty captain comes in.
Yeah.
I tell him the whole thing, right? And they're thinking I'm nuts, but they're letting me go now. So I'm leaving the precinct. As I'm walking out, this is like an hour and a half, 2 hours later, all these people start coming in and say, oh, that's the cop that tried to save us, and they shot at him.
Wow.
So now they had to start all over again. Now they're looking at it like me. Oh, maybe you are the good guy in this thing. Now they're thinking I'm not. You know, I'm the one with the smoking gun, and there's no witnesses or complaining. Now they, oh yeah, this cop, he shot at him. He tried to catch him. So now we did the whole thing over again, and I look like the good guy.
So they were just going to let you go?
Yeah, but they did all the interviews, made notifications.
Okay.
You know.
Wow.
It was nuts.
Unreal. Unreal.
You know.
Gee, so you've had
But I've
quite
also
the career.
taken cars, yanked a guy out of a car and drove. I can't remember the incident right off hand now, but I've done that too.
That's a lot within 14 years.
Oh, my God, I could go on. We could sit here for days.
So much within 14 years. And your book, I'm sure
The
you
book
have a lot in
covers
there.
it.
Yeah.
You know, I wrote the book with another. You know, it's funny. I tried to write a book back in the early '70s where I did half my career, and I got all the letters at home where I was turned down by everybody. They wanted something national where I saved the Pope or the president, you know, but they didn't want a local street cop.
Got you.
Right. But then once I retired and they started talking bad about cops and stuff, and I felt I had to tell the story because my book shows cops in a good light. You know, I write about my experience, and all my experiences with police officers were good, you know. And I wound up, I couldn't find the right writer. And all of a sudden, someone hooked me up with a guy who was a retired lieutenant and worked in my precinct, he was in TPF, the Tactical Patrol Force, and worked in these bad neighborhoods and knew everything. And it was a lot easier working with him. His name was Pat Piccarelli, and he was a Vietnam vet, like I discussed earlier, and he knew everything we went through because he was on the same years. And he was, when you describe it to a cop, like I tell to you, and I use abbreviations or a slang word, or you know what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
because it's,
Right.
our verbiage in our profession.
Right. The acronyms and
Yeah.
the jargon. Yep.
To describe something to him, if I say, well, we're going in this hall and there's like shit on the floors and the smell of urine, he knows he didn't need me to expand because it was his experience too.
Right.
And I think the book came out great because he was the writer with me. And to explain to a civilian would be hard to capture the way we did. And the book is still out there selling like crazy it's 8 years already. And really, you write the book 2 years before it comes out because it wasn't a self-published book. It had to go through a publisher, and they do a lot of things. They edit it by paragraph, by sentence, by line. They have different teams for the cover, for the colors, the cover,
It's a whole
the
production.
binder.
Whole production.
They want pick 100 pictures to pick 10. It takes 2 years. Then the legalese, getting contract. So the book was really written in like 15.
Wow.
So it came out in 17. And it's a process. And I think, of course I'm being biased, it's my book, but I think we really captured it right. And everybody who reads it still talks about it and gives me praise, which I really love it.
So with the book, does your story end with your career ending?
Yes.
How?
But I do have plans to write another book.
Okay.
And I have a great title for it, and I have all the stories. And another thing that I failed to mention before, when you write a book and you self-publish, you can put down anything you want. When you deal with a publishing company who gave us an advance, everything has to be proven. They have fact-finding teams that are led by lawyers and investigators that they fact-find. I saved like 85, 90% of my paperwork, but they fact-check everything. So my stories are proven to be true.
Wow.
And at the same time, working for those 2 years, I had a TV show going, which came out at the same time in September of 17. And they had to prove the stories. And it was a big highlight of my life, too, to have these two things coming out at once. And I'm very proud of both of them. And it's funny because just last night, this is funny, because last night, I'm very big on Facebook, and I wrote a recommendation for a TV series that me and my wife just finished watching. And a lot of people responded stuff, put likes and things. And one guy wrote, the series was great, but I loved your series better.
Your series is really good.
And it was just like out of nowhere because it's like 8 years removed.
Yeah.
And it was a really nice comment. I left this morning. I don't know how many more comments came in on it. But someone was referring back to, and a lot of people still refer to my book. And I think we captured things, very good in the book. Very good.
So you said that if your career had not ended early.
I like to think I'd stay on for 100 years. I probably would have been killed in the line of duty. Because, when I was laying in that hospital recovering from my line of duty.
Well, before you get into that, you almost did get killed in the line of duty.
Yes.
If you would like to get into that story.
There's a lot of time when those people are shooting at me.
Yeah.
They missed, but I'm inches away from death at these incidents too.
But your career ending.
My career-ending incident was I was on vacation. I just came back from vacation, and it's funny. We went with 3 or 4 guys. We went on a motorcycle trip to Virginia Beach.
It's a nice trip.
Oh, it's a beautiful trip. You go through the tunnel and bridge and tunnel going down here. It's the biggest bridge and tunnel span in the country, maybe the world. It's 17 miles long. You're riding under the water, over the water.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, Virginia Beach, the bridge and tunnel. And we had a great time down here. And the girls we were dating at the time flew down. We went on a Wednesday to Wednesday. The girls flew down Friday after work and were coming back Sunday night. And we spent Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday with them. Then they flew back to work. And so I got back from vacation. I go to work, and I get into the car with my regular partner, who I was very close with, Timmy Kennedy. And I did most of the driving. I probably drove 90, 95% of the time. but I was still vibrating from the motorcycle trip, And I said, let him drive. Not that it was his fault. Still can't prove whose fault it was. But so we're on patrol, and a cop is calling for a 1013, which is a cop in trouble, as you know.
Yep.
But well, it was like what we call a real call because the cop was calling it himself. A lot of calls come in, cop in trouble or fighting or in trouble through 911, and it could be a fake call to draw cops to another place, or some sickos just like to see police cars racing around and converging on a scene. But this was what we call a real 13 because the cop himself is calling it. So you really race to the scene like you do with any 1013.
100%.
So we're racing to the scene, and it's the old, light and siren. We're in an unmarked Plymouth Volare, which was a small car. So we're heading west, and when we get to a certain point, we're going to turn left going south. Before we could make that left, there was a radio car coming from the north heading south, and he T-boned me right into my hip through the car. And back in those days, you needed, I don't know how AID is now, Accident Investigation Squad Division, they would need 30 feet of rubber to calculate, this was 1983, technology today, God bless you, technology today, they could probably do all the kind of things, and there'd be cameras, of course, but they hit me without touching the brakes, going full speed, probably doing about 75 miles an hour, right into my hip, and the car was so bad that they put when it hit the newspapers, different newspapers, one of them had the wrong side of the car. It was so bad. Oh, no. Because we hit a bus on the other side, went into a parked bus. And they put that side, not even the side of impact. But when you see the actual picture, which I'm going to show you later today, because it's on my wall, the floor came up, the roof came down, the sides came in. I would have been killed if I didn't have a seatbelt on. If
you had your seatbelt on.
If I had my seatbelt on, I would have been killed.
If you had your seatbelt on,
right.
You would have been killed.
It's one of these small percentages of accidents where having a seatbelt would have killed me because the floor and roof came up and the side came in. It would have cut me up in half. I was thrown under the dash. They had to get the fire department. They pulled the fire department off a job to cut me out of the car, which took 2 hours.
Were you conscious?
They said I was only knocked out for a minute or two, but then I went into shock, and I don't remember. They said you were talking to officers and everything. I don't remember anything because I went into shock after the 2 minutes of being knocked out. And then when they got me to the hospital, I was under such heavy sedation because I had 23 broken bones. I shattered my hip in 100 pieces and broke my pelvic, left, right, upper, and lower. Now, I had a lot of muscle on me and nothing moved. So I didn't get an operation. They x-rayed my hip every day, which was so painful because I was in traction, right? And I was laid up in this hospital for 3 months. They were all treated and released in 12 hours. They had broken bones, missing teeth, which one girl, the girl was in the other car. It was a rookie driving and a seasoned officer in the car. Her teeth got knocked out, a couple of her teeth, and she broke an arm or something. And when she was in the emergency room, because we were friendly after this, the doctor said to her, "Man, I wish I had these teeth." She says, "Here's my teeth." And the doctor stuffed them in, and they retook, believe it or not. She went on later on to become a sergeant and a lieutenant, and then later retired. A rookie was driving the patrol car. He cut his ear and his knee, and he stayed out sick and got recovered. He got his knee stitched up. Everything was good. My partner, Timmy Kennedy, he had glass in his eyelid. He broke his shoulder. He had a lot of injuries, but treated and released also. I laid there 3 months, and that was a career-ending accident. And getting back how we started on that, I was laying in this hospital, thinking my career was over. I'm saying, man, I was 34. And I'm saying...
Only 34.
I was only 34. I did my 14 years on the job. I'm saying, I'm 34, and I'm realizing now, I was grabbing kids 15, 14, with guns and stuff, and they're getting younger and faster. I'm getting older and a little slower. Being a police officer is a young man's job.
It is.
That's why you did your time. You did 17 years. Now you're the old man there.
That's a fact.
That's a fact.
Yeah.
It's a young man's job. Everyone's
It
coming
is.
on 21, 22, 23.
That's right.
Very rare you get a guy in their 30s.
Yeah.
You know? So I'm realizing, and I already knew my job was over because I had police surgeons visiting. They put in my papers for me. I was done, And it was being injured so bad probably helped me, my mind, because my mind was only concentrated on getting better physically.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking about the job and what was being taken away from me. Ironically, with all the shootouts and wild arrests and fights and knives, I get hurt by the police. There's something
irony
to
in
this
that.
day, God had other plans for me.
And that's what I wanted to touch on.
God had other plans for me because I've done so many other things since I retired. And I never had them planned. That's something about being a police officer is that your life could change in a flash of 1 second. Any of those cases, I could have been shot. I could have been hurt in car accidents. I could have been crippled. When I first got into the hospital, they told my family there's a chance he could die. And I had blunt trauma over 85% of my body, which I'll tell you what blunt trauma could look like. If you get shot and you're wearing a bulletproof vest, the blood doesn't know that. The blood doesn't know that. It rushes to that spot of impact. That's why you turn black and blue, like you got hit with a bat.
Right.
So the blood don't know. It rushes there, but there's no hole because you got the vest on.
Right.
So you turn black and blue, and then after a while it disperses. They thought I had internal bleeding. There was blood all over places they shouldn't have been in my body. Because I do remember in this whole thing, the one thing I remember, they took a little razor blade, shaved a spot on my stomach, and inserted a tube. And it showed internal bleeding. But when they checked it another time later, which I don't remember, that blood dissipated. And I didn't have internal bleeding.
Wow.
The blood rushed to a spot to come out, but didn't come out. But it was like getting hit with a bullet. My whole body, the car was the bullet. But the bullet hitting that bulletproof vest didn't penetrate.
Wow.
But I remember telling him, internal bleeding, he might die.
Man.
And then they said I'm going to be a cripple. Now, I do remember, this was a distinct thing too. I was under heavy drugs because the pain was crazy. I woke up, I thought it was a dream, but it wasn't, which I found out. There were 7 girls around my bed, right? And I knew I was dating them, right?
You were dating all 7?
It was 6 or 7 girls. One might have been a nurse, but there was like 7 girls there. And I knew I'm dating all of these girls at once. And it was all kinds. I had Spanish, black girl, Puerto Rican girl, white girl, Irish girl, Italian girl. They're all around the bed. And I just went like this. I saw them, and I just made like I passed out again from the drugs. I like willed myself to sleep. One of those girls is my wife today.
Really?
And she met all these girls. She interacted with them, talked to them. They were all there for me.
How did that go?
Well, obviously it stayed good with the girl. She's still my wife, right? So here's what happened. So the other girls saw I was in really bad shape. I mean, when I got out of the hospital, just to give you an idea of what weight loss I had, they were bringing me out, and when the nurse stopped and said, "No, this ain't Ralph Friedman." I said, "No, I am Ralph Friedman."
Wow.
They thought they were transporting the wrong person because emergency service picked me up. They sent the ambulance. Police department took care of me very well. I'll get into that too. So my prognosis was so terrible, and I looked so bad because they started putting tubes in. I caught shit in the hospital. You get pneumonia, phlebitis. I caught a blood disease, streptococcus, which you needed treatment every 8 hours. It was terrible. So these girls faded out fast. They say, what am I going to be with this vegetable or something?
Right.
This one girl, my wife Grace, who you'll meet in a little while, she stuck in there. She says, "I knew you would get better." She says, "I knew I was number one because you saw me on weekends." She sort of knew.
I'm glad she was able to find the light in that.
So she came to the hospital every single day.
Wow.
She did the triangle: work, home, hospital, work, home,
She loved
hospital.
you.
7 days a week.
How did that make you feel?
Well, it started feeling good. It's funny. she, when I got out of the hospital, I couldn't do anything. I was in a wheelchair, which was supplied by the police department, the emergency services. And she moved in with me, right?
She moved
and
in
I,
with you.
I always tease her. I said, I was in the wheelchair on drugs and you moved in. I still can't get you out. Took advantage of me.
Man.
Right? So we lived together. We didn't believe in marriage and stuff. We lived together and we just got married like 3 years ago.
3 years from today? Like 3 years from this year?
Yeah.
Really?
Well, February will be 4 years. We got married. I got it tattooed on me. 2/22/22 at 2:22 in the afternoon. I hired the clerk in City Hall. Told you got to do it at 2:22. I wanted all to be twos, and we got married 4 years ago. But we've been living together as married for 42 years.
Why the twos?
I don't know. It's just because I was working an overnight. Our honeymoon was. I went after the thing. I went home to sleep, and she went to the gym. It just happened.
Wow.
I think maybe because it was in the afternoon, and that's when the county clerk that was going to marry us, was available. And I think we had her sister and brother-in-law and one friend came as a witness or something, and they were all available at 2 o'clock. So he said, let's make it 2:22. I got it in my head. I don't know why.
That's crazy.
Because I do crazy things.
How much?
But, she was so instrumental mentally. All my life was focused on being a police officer,
Yeah.
a detective, police, whatever.
Yeah.
But then my whole life changed into getting better. And she helped me every step of the way. Every step of the way.
With all of the circumstances and dangerous circumstances and situations that you've been in, how much has spirituality been a part of your journey or believing in?
Well, I was never religious, but I believe in God.
Yeah.
I don't go to synagogue.
Completely
or church.
different. Yep.
And, I feel I don't have to be in a synagogue or church to talk to God.
That's right.
And I have talked to God many times, and I feel He answered me. And I don't know why. I'm not a religious person, but my wife had some incidents with precancerous cells and stuff, and I prayed for her, and then it came back. She had surgery to take it out, and she's okay. I prayed for certain things, and He helped me.
Yeah. It's about the relationship. There's a difference.
Religion. You don't have to go to church.
Religion
I can
is
talk
structure.
to him in my basement.
Religion is structure. Spirituality is a relationship. It's being able to talk to God directly. And
well, there's a country song out, which I find funny, and I connect to it. It says, "I only talk to God when I need it, when I'm in trouble." Did you ever hear that song?
No,
it's pretty high on the chart.
Okay, man.
But,
so much, man.
I believe in God, and obviously it got to be a higher power, and I believe that our number is in the book when you're going to go. It wasn't my time on all those shootings or that car accident, and I believe that everybody has a journey, and you're going to find it one way or the other. It's going to lead there, and I've done a lot of things since I retired. Giving speeches, podcasts like this. I hope they're inspirational to police officers.
100% are.
I feel I'm doing something that way, and I sort of keep up my relationship with the police or the police department, even though it's probably in my mind. But I hope I influence people or encourage them or set them on a path or stuff like that. And I had the TV show. I've done some other things. I was a technical advisor on the movie The Many Saints of Newark, which was the prequel to The Sopranos.
Right.
I was a technical advisor on that. I have a new show that's out right now in the UK. I did 2 episodes of 3 that they made where I pick apart movie clips of iconic movies from the 70s. And they just came out.
Nice.
And they're on YouTube now on the Daily Mail Crime Watch. But they're playing as
the
a
Daily
TV
Mail
show.
UK. Got you.
They're playing as a TV show in the UK, but they're on for America over here now.
Oh, no, that's
and
great.
I've done a lot of things, jobs and stuff, and I guess that was the path that God had planned for me.
That's amazing. So, Ralph, let me ask you this question. What does purpose over pension mean to you?
Well, like I say, I felt my purpose was being a police officer. And the purpose of a police officer is helping people. Even though you only hear about the bad things or you're taking people's freedom away or you got to arrest them or shoot them. but you're helping people. You know, there's innocent people that go to work every day, pay taxes, have all good intentions of raising families and stuff, and they need protection, and that's what police officers across America do. I think somehow it became my purpose. I don't know how or why, but like I say, God has a path, and that's how my life came out. I don't know.
I must say,
mean, I feel I've done good.
yeah.
I like to feel I've done good. I like to feel I help people, save people. You know, I feel I did my best.
I must say, whenever I think about a police officer that is in their purpose as a police officer, you come to mind.
Then I must have did something good.
Yeah.
You know, I feel a lot of people tell me that, and it makes me feel proud of my profession. You know, I was proud to be a part of NYPD, and it is my life, and it is my person. Even though some people don't see that, I think you don't see it as much as I see because I feel it. You know, and you had a different calling.
Right.
You know, everybody has a different calling. That's why people become doctors, nurses, lawyers, plumbers, mechanics. Everybody, it's their life. I don't know. It comes out.
The way that I see it is I did enough time in order to understand what was going on with the police culture so I could do what I'm doing now.
Well, like I say, the police culture changed so much, and it's held people back. I probably couldn't be, I couldn't be a cop today. Everything's changed. But things always change. They changed before I became a cop, you know, and then I dealt with it, like with the NAP commission and the corruption, and then things changed. And there's always big changes. I feel there's big changes in the department. It seems to fall like every 20 years. You know, it could be 17, it could be 23. But it averages out to like every 20 years, there's some monstrous change. And the biggest one in the last 20 was probably, like I said, 5, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, with George Floyd and the cameras and videos everywhere, body cams and cameras and cell phones.
It's funny. I say that too. I say every 20 years, I feel like there's some type of event that happens that forces things to change. But it's usually not. It doesn't start with the police department itself.
It could be. It starts.
It starts outside of it, and then the police department reacts to it.
It gets caught up in the wave.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
so with 9/11, terrorism and anti-terrorism, that changed, and that changed the dynamic of the police department. And
remember when that happened? Right after, how people loved cops. Yeah. They were bringing meals. Yeah. They were painting posters. They loved police. And then it changes again.
Yeah. And snap of a finger, all it takes is one incident.
You know, and the media plays a big part in things.
Oh, 100%.
You know, I mean, the media went from reporting news to creating it or leaning it in the path they want. You know, their agendas.
It's going to get them the most views.
You know, it's political, and the media carries it the way they want.
That's right.
You know, they just they don't show it in the proper light to me. You know, they have this thing. They want to make police look bad, and they don't show what brings. They might show a half a video.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
They don't show, you know, what precipitated the cop to make an action that he's doing.
Right.
You know, the guy punched the cop in the face 10 times. They don't show that. They show the one time the cop throws the 11th punch at the guy. You know, they have their slant or agenda, and it's very powerful. Very powerful. It's what everybody sees.
I agree with you 100%, Ralph.
The media and the papers and the TV, and it's not fair reporting like in the old days. They only reported the news, and you would draw the conclusions.
Correct.
Where today, they have their own
They paint the picture. They paint the picture, yep.
They put you in that direction. They lead you.
Right. It's more leading. I agree with you 100%. But listen, Ralph, thank you so much for coming on the podcast
Lenny,
today.
Pleasure.
Great conversation.
Always.
Very important that everybody knows where to find you, knows what you have going on, where they could buy Street Warrior.
Well, the book is on Amazon.com. It's still in audio, Kindle, and soft cover, oversized. I have a website, is BronxStreetWarrior.com. I'm all over. You can put my name, Detective Ralph Friedman, in Google or on YouTube. I'm all over. And like I said, the Daily Mail Crime Watch. I have 2 episodes of their new show playing in the UK. And thank you, Lenny, for having me.
Of course.
Always a pleasure. We remain friends
That's
a
right.
long time.
That's right.
And it's great to hook up again together. And we're going to enjoy a visit to my house after this.
Yes, we will.
And enjoy a good dinner.
Thanks, Ralph.
My pleasure.